Welcome to the Indiana Athletic Trainers Association podcast. The IATA is dedicated to advancing the profession of athletic training and empowering membership through advocacy, education, networking, and innovative resources. To find out more about the IATA, check out our website and social media pages. The views and opinions expressed by speakers, guests, or others who have provided materials to and for this podcast are not necessarily those of the IATA. The IATA assumes no responsibility for, nor endorses any of the comments, recommendations, or materials that are provided. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the IATA podcast. I'm excited for this episode, and I am pleasured to have President Becky Clifton of the Indiana Athletic Trainers Association on the podcast. Welcome to the episode, Becky.
Thanks, Daniel.
Well, this episode, I really want to talk to you, Becky, about your presidency as being the 21st president of the IATA, and talk a little bit about your first year in and kind of, what with your 1 year left, what other things to hope to do. But before we get rolling there, as we do on pretty much every kind of podcast, we want the guests to introduce themselves. And so
Okay.
you're no stranger to the IATA, but introduce yourselves to people, where you're at, where you're practicing, and from
Okay.
there.
Okay. Well, I'm Becky Clifton, and I work at Floyd Central High School. I've been there now. This is my 34th year. It's my 10th year with court physical therapy at the school. Prior to that, I worked for the school district. And I don't have any disclosures that I need to make. I started committee work with the IATA shortly after I moved back to the state in 91. I can't tell you exactly when I started back, but I've worked on several committees. And then that was probably till mid 2000s. And then I stepped back for a while to take care of my mom, and then got back into it when I ran for treasurer in 2019.
And if
So
I'm
that's kind
cor
of the journey there.
and if I'm correct, you served one term as treasurer, and then obviously took the leap of faith,
One,
like
yes. Yeah, it was a leap of faith.
like
Uh,
every
so
IATA president would say, yeah.
Adam asked me if I would run for president-elect, with the understanding that if the licensure update did not pass, that I would continue to carry that through. So that was the original idea, was that if it didn't go through in his term, that I would carry it on. We got very fortunate and it went through in 1 year. So then I had to start thinking about things that I wanted to accomplish in my time as president. And one of the things that I had wanted to do was to get legislation through on youth safety, including things, a heat illness type legislative effort, but including other aspects of youth safety in that bill. One of the things we did was approach the IHSAA about that bill. And in that meeting, their concern with that was that we didn't have athletic trainers at enough rural high schools to ever enforce that, and it would be a burden on the coaches and the ADs. So they asked us to consider legislation that would help put athletic trainers in rural high schools. So I pivoted with Lou and Lucas's help. Lou is our lobbyist. Lucas is our governmental affairs chair. And we had to pivot fast at that point, because we met with them, it's either late July or early August. And for those that have not been involved in legislative efforts, you have to be ready to hit the ground running um, when the legislature opens their session. And actually, you have to be ready before that because you have to start greasing the wheels of politicians prior to that. And so Lou and Lucas really started their efforts. I knew of a area down here by me that's really close that they are the poorest county in the state, and they need an athletic trainer. They want an athletic trainer. They cannot afford one. Lou happens to know that particular legislator very well from that area, and that is Senator Bartels. So that's who we approached about taking the legislation forward. And we gave it a good shot on the first run, and we got shot down this time. So the plan at this point is to give this another run. We're going to kind of rewrite our bill, try to seek, and Lou's already doing all of this too, is try to seek more support and go forward again the next session. It'll be a short session, so we don't know how that'll go. My hope is that when Jenny comes in as the president, that can continue forward. I think this is probably going to take 3 to 4 efforts before we see it go through because of the cost involved with it. But I hope it continues because my thought process, having been in the high school setting for so long, is that every kid deserves to have care. And we've got to find a way to do that to help especially the schools that are out in the rural setting that don't have the financial backing. They don't have a bigger hospital entity close enough to them to have that type of a setup near them to put an athletic trainer at their school. And I have another school in this area that has reached out to me to try to get somebody to them. And they're another school that's kind of in that situation where they can't find somebody because of where they are. They've got the funding to have someone, but they're so rural that we're having trouble getting someone that wants to go there. So that's the other side of the coin. So we've got to try to find a way to get people connected. So that's our hope with this. And then hopefully somewhere down the road, someone else will pick up that youth safety idea and move.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had some conversations with people, about obviously we know what the gold standard of healthcare, athletic healthcare should be in the secondary school, right? Like we all know that as athletic trainers and those that are in the sports medicine community. But what we have to understand is we have to start somewhere and we have to say, okay, where can we try to make some advances to make sure that these student athletes, these patients that we care deeply about that are needing healthcare services, there's unique ways to get it done. Every school district, Becky, like you were talking about, they're in unique circumstances, have unique situations,
Yep.
whether it be finances, whether it be political, whether it be where they're located at in the state. There's so many different things, but I think if we can make some just steps and continue to try to figure out ways, and over time, if we can continue to offer options, obviously we need some more athletic trainers in the great Hoosier state. So if you're looking for a
Yep.
job, make sure you reach out. There's plenty of
Yes,
job postings, but
definitely.
I think it's all about this. We know what we want. We know what the gold standard is, but I think there's so many unique ways we can get that accomplished, and that's what I was kind of excited about with this bill, and kind of how we move forward from here. And it's a unique way to try to place athletic trainers and get athletic
Yeah.
trainers in these schools that truly need an athletic trainer.
Yeah. Yeah. And the goal is that hopefully they fall in love with the setting and they stay. That's the whole goal of it. Yeah, that's kind of what happened for me. I left the college setting and went back to the high school I graduated from. my intentions were to stay for a couple of years, get the program on its feet, and then go back to the college setting. And like I said, I've been there for 34 years now. So it is an easy setting for some to fall in love with, but you have to be the right person. So, because I'm not going to say it's for everybody, because it's not.
Yeah, absolutely. But definitely definitely one of those options and settings that obviously people sometimes need to kind of figure out where it fits in their
Mhm.
life too, life and
Yep.
life changes, right? And
Oh,
sometimes
definitely.
that secondary school just as one setting, right? Like that's part of it. There's different options and flexibilities with a secondary school setting that may another setting may not offer. And so I think what you're getting down to is like let's get these secondary schools some type of athletic training services,
Yes.
and let's get them healthcare. And then over time, when we can get more athletic trainers in our schools, then we can start with these other policies and athletic trainers know
Yeah.
best
And
practice, right?
that's one of the things, and and actually sitting down with the IHSA and getting to listen to their side of it was, I don't want to, it wasn't really eye-opening, but it gave me a better understanding of where they were coming from. Um, and I have a better appreciation now for that, in that they don't want to legislate something that can't be enforced to the high schools. And so it makes more sense now in that regard. And so I have a better appreciation of where they're coming from after that meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what
But
we do as the IATA, right? We have to look at all the stakeholders involved and understand where everybody's coming
mhm,
from, and then how do we find that mutual ground? That way, everybody can understand. Okay, here's how we can get things done. It may not be the way that we thought we were going to initially do, like you said, you had to pivot, but it's a way that
yeah,
we could potentially get some things moving forward
yeah,
here.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
What are some other, obviously you talked about youth sports safety and those types of things, and obviously heat illness.
mhm,
Talk a little bit about, I know Indiana had working with KSI and having a Tufts event.
mhm.
Can you talk a little bit
Yes.
about that, and then kind of a little bit more about kind of some thoughts that you have with youth sports safety and ideal things that we need in our youth sports?
So along with the heat safety, you've got things like wet bulb global temperature, which in Indiana, the thing that is interesting is we have two different categories for our temperature zones. So right about Indianapolis and then north is category 2, and south of there is category 3. So category 3 is actually the southeastern part of the United States.
Mm,
So in like my area, which is Metro Louisville, we actually have a lot more hot, humid days than the northern part of Indiana does. So we would both be reading our wet bulb global temperatures based off of different categories. So that automatically is a little bit of a challenge, but it's not a hurdle that we can't get over with anything that we would put out. Um, and I think that was part of the IHSAA's initial hesitancy with some of that issue. But what I don't, if there's an athletic trainer, it's really not an issue. Um, but if there's only a coach or an AD, it could be an issue. So that's where some of that is. Now, the one part that would be interesting is if, let's say, my team comes up to Indy and plays, whose category do you go with?
mm,
So that's where, when we were talking this through with the IHSAA, there were questions about that. So whose category do you use? Do we go with my teams or do we go with the Indy teams? And it is an interesting concept of which direction do we go. Um, we didn't ever settle that in that conversation at that time. I think that'd be one where we'd go back to the Corey Stringer Institute and ask, what are other states doing in this case? Because there are a few other states that also have multiple categories to deal with. There aren't, California, I think, is one that has, I think, 3 categories, if I remember
mm.
correctly. Don't quote me on that one. Um, but there are issues where we have to look at things like that going forward. Cold water immersion and cooling techniques is another area that has to be looked at, and how we handle that. Rectal temperature in some schools is an issue. I know technically in some schools you're not allowed to do it, but I know some athletic trainers that it's like it's the gold standard. I'm doing it, um, and that's something that we need to actually get out there and get to the point where everybody knows that that is the gold standard. We need to do it to care for the athlete in the proper way. And that's something that as well, the Corey Stringer Institute has everything we need. We need to utilize them to help. And they were prepared to help us because we met with them prior to all of this as well. Um, and that was after the initial Tufts meeting. Um, so there were several components to this. With the new AED law that had gone into effect, we weren't as concerned about the AEDs as much as potentially looking at coaches training, and going a little further, potentially looking at EAP practice with the coaches each year. So there were some components to things that we were looking at. So there's a lot of things that could still be done. There's things that could be added, not added. Um, but that's probably for someone else down the line.
Yeah, and I think like you're saying, it's baby steps and pivoting where we need
Yeah,
to pivot and being
yeah.
able to do what we need to
And it
do.
may be chunks of legislation, not all at once
Mm,
to get it through. That's unfortunate aspect of it. If we put too much in, we might get shot down just automatically. If we do it in pieces, it might go faster. That's where we have to trust our lobbyists on that.
right. And then
And
obviously,
and because he has the measurement of the temperature of the law of the legislature at the time and what's going to work.
yeah. And obviously we have obviously working with other key stakeholders in this. And like you mentioned, the
Yes.
IHSAA, we
Mhm.
also want to make sure, hey, we're working with you, not against you. And we want to make sure that
Right.
we work together in
Yes.
all of this.
Mhm. Yeah. I think one of the things that is potentially hurt us is the loss of the Indiana. Uh, I'm going to lose the right order of words here. The Sports Medicine Commission for the physicians. That committee is no longer um, active. I guess it's been dissolved. Would be another way to put it. In charge of our team mission award, and now we are because they got dissolved. Um, so it's not a separate committee anymore. Um, so now if we go to talk to the physicians, we're talking to all physicians. Basically, we're not just talking to sports medicine physicians. They don't have a separate committee anymore. So that makes it a little bit more challenging. But
And that was with the ISMA, correct?
thank you. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So we jumped right in and talking about some, obviously some legislation and some different things, and
Mhm.
obviously youth sports safeties, on your heart, and obviously working
Yes.
with the
Yeah, it
secondary
is.
school,
Mhm.
student athletes. What are
Yep.
some other things as you're in your first year of presidency that you feel like have been some moving the ball along here, or maybe some accomplishments you've been proud of thus far?
Um, well, with your help, the 40th anniversary event was very successful, but a lot of that was on your shoulders too, because you did most of that with your committee, and I appreciate that a great deal. Uh, so that was, I think, a very successful event. I think we did a good job with that. I say we, but I just kind of stood back and let you guys do it because I didn't want to have a hard hand in that. Um, I think you and the committee did a great job, and it was successful. We had a huge gathering of people, more than the room really intended to hold. So that was great. And it was a great event. It was well attended. Um, I think people enjoyed it. We got good feedback on it. So I think that's probably one of the biggest ones. And then the symposium the next day being hands on. That was a great event. Again, that's you and Chrissy on that one. And so it was a good weekend, a really good weekend. So those two were good events. Hopefully this year's will be as good. Um, so we're planning that hands-on again for the symposium and again at Forte on June 8th. So hopefully that'll be again well attended. And then the awards event will be the night before on the 7th. Don't have a location just yet, but and you still have until tomorrow to turn in applications or awards, but that's
Yeah, by the time this
that I
podcast
don't know if
drops, I
it's
think
this
that'll
airs,
be
it
past.
won't.
But
Yeah, it'll be too late. Yeah, but hopefully we could have some people there that will have that can come to help honor our award winners.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yep.
So obviously, some good accomplishments and some things moving here in your first year. And uh, before I start talking about the future and kind of what next year holds, over the next year holds for you,
Yeah.
what's, obviously, people have a lot of questions or may not really understand what it
Mhm.
means to be the IATA president. So I guess my first question to you in regards to that would be, what was something that was, maybe a challenge or something that was unique when you took over as IATA president, that was like, oh, that's interesting, and what I'm going to have to be able to do. And, can I talk a little bit about maybe something of that nature and as IATA
Well,
president?
I did not understand the magnitude of Zoom calls that I was going to have to be on in a month's time. I mean, I'm averaging 2, 3 a week, and sometimes more than that. I had no idea that that's what I was going to be involved in. And the number of people from NATA that want a piece of your time. It's amazing. Um, and I mean, it's even when you're president elect, I didn't realize that how much Adam's time was taken up with this. So it's interesting.
Yeah,
I had a Zoom call earlier today with NATA. So yeah, it's and then there's Gladys stuff too. But it's interesting.
yeah, it's a never ending meetings and
Yeah,
communications and all kinds of
it
stuff.
is. I think that's one of the things I'm looking forward to not having when I'm not president. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, you know, was there something that I guess as far as in your first year that it was like, wow, like I'm so glad that I did this as president, or maybe a story you heard from a IATA member. What are some maybe some like a kind of a positive wow moment or hearing from a member? Like, have you had any conversations of that nature or felt like, man, I'm so glad that this is happening now?
So that happened last week at GLADA, actually. I ran into a student uh, who came up to me, and it was kind of a weird situation because they came up to me. They're like, in their undergrad, they were friends with a student from my high school. And they came home with them that weekend. They came to a football game. The younger brother of the girl from my high school played football. She watched the football game, watched me on the sidelines, and it piqued her interest. She got into athletic training. She's now in a master's program and in athletic training. And she found out that I was the president, thought that was really cool. They found one of the Zoom calls for one of our meetings and didn't realize that a high school athletic trainer could do that. And yeah, so it was just kind of one of those moments where you never really know who's watching you. And I mean, I've always known that, but I didn't realize the trail to that extent. Um, so it's kind of one of those moments where you never know, but sometimes you never hear that part of it or the effect of that. And I got to hear it. So it was kind of cool
Yeah.
to hear that somebody, you know, you had an effect even though you didn't really know it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a really cool story, and to hear that, and then obviously to be able to interact with that student as well, and
Yeah.
who will be a future great athletic trainer, hopefully in our
Yep.
state of Indiana, and so it's
Yep.
like those are the cool things to hear, and obviously, like you said, that impact
Yeah.
that you're making when you don't even know you are really.
Yeah. Yeah. It was just interesting to hear that whole line. And it was, yeah.
So, kind of as you've good 12 months as president, and you have another
Yep.
good 12 months left as IATA president. What are
Yeah.
some things, yeah, you're looking forward to as your next 12 months as the president of the IATA?
Um, I'm really excited about our new I'm going to screw this up on the committees. Perf- no, it's development chair, Matthew. Um, he's been in officially for not quite a full month yet, and he's already lining people up for different levels of sponsorship. So I'm really excited about having him on board. Um, and a couple of our other new people that have come onto the board or into committee positions. It's just that new life being injected in. Um, uh, it's I'm excited. The other big piece, we are so close to having the policies and procedures updated and the bylaws updated. It's just like we're to the point of like fine tooth combing it and getting it ready to present to the entire board for a final vote. So getting that across the finish line, I am so ready to get that done and put to bed. So that one, I'll be very happy when we get that one done. So, and excited to get it across the finish line.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's a big one that I'm looking forward to. Some other things. I mean, the summer meeting. I'm excited about that again. Last year I ran around worried that everything was going right. This year I'm gonna kind of try to actually participate in the symposium and not worry so much because it went fine. But it was, I think, the newness of the position and wanting to make sure everything went right um, when I didn't need to do that. So this year, I think I'm going to sit back and let everybody do their thing that needs to do their thing, and I'm just going to do my thing and be a student.
Yeah, smile and wave, Becky.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that, but I'll smile and I'll be a student. but, um, but yeah, I don't know. Last year I was well, and like at the honors and awards thing, I just stood up there in front, and it was so awkward to do the pictures and stand the whole time, and my feet were killing me. So it was it was just weird to be standing there in the front with nothing to do except until they came up to get their picture. So we got to work something out on that this year. But yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned something about new committee members,
Mhm.
new committee chairs and
Yes.
coordinators.
Yeah.
And you've also talked about kind of your time commitment as president.
Hmm.
One of the things that I love when I get to interact with students or newer
Hmm.
professionals. I'm a newer professional myself still. I'm still calling myself
Yeah.
young, and I'm going to hang on to that.
Well, I
Um,
still think I am, even though I'm really not. But yeah.
So I try to hold on to that and right and but one of the things that I love to ask people because I want to get their feedback on is how
Mhm.
much time do you think, and this is what I ask people, right? I ask how much time do you think the president, quote, works per week as president of the IATA, like how many hours per week? Or I ask them as committee chairs or
Um,
committee members, what would you say? What would be your answer? Because I'm always surprised at the answers I get from students.
I would say uh, it ebbs and flows depending on time of year. When we get to budget time, I'm doing more at that point, time commitment wise. Um, on average, I'd say probably the max average is about 3 hours a week, and that's the max. Um, the more commonly, I'd say probably an hour to 2 hours a week, just because of the Zoom calls that I'm on, and then answering emails and texts. So it's not horrible. Um, it's trying to keep up with when they are sometimes is interesting, and trying to fit it in with my commitments with my work is another issue. Um, Zoom is fantastic in that I can usually get it done that way. Where it gets a little dicey is when I have to be somewhere physically. Um, so that that's a little harder because then I have to make sure things are covered at my school and I can get somewhere. And considering I'm basically on the line with the state of Kentucky, it depends on where it is in the state of Indiana. Um, so I've got drive time involved. And then I-65 is always under construction, so that presents its problems too. Um, but it's a matter of that. It's, I'm going to make a very concerted effort this year to get to the student symposium. Last year, I didn't. I've caught a little bit of heat about that. Um, that was a hard week. It was still fall for me. Football was still going on, volleyball was still going on, and my winter sports were picking up. And Sunday is the only day I had off, and it didn't happen. It just didn't happen. And so this year they've moved the student symposium to midweek. I am hoping that I can pull it off. It's just that the day they picked is also a contact football practice. And we'll still be in the playoffs at that point
Mhm.
because it's the first round of our sectional at that point. Um, it should work or be able to work,
Yeah.
barring anything weird and unforeseen.
Yeah. And it's interesting because when you said as far as, maybe a few hours a week, obviously ebbs and flows. Because when I talk with students and say, hey, how much do you time, back when I was the
Hmm.
professional development chair or yeah, development chair. Um, students would I'd be like, hey, as a chair, how many hours a week do you think I spend doing stuff, right? And they were
Hmm.
like, well, you probably spend, I don't know, 20, 30 hours a week doing stuff for the
Oh
IATA.
my.
And I would try to keep a straight face, and then I would be like,
Yeah.
well, we have committee members. How much time do you think they do? They're like, oh, probably 10 hours a week,
Yeah.
and then I would be like, okay, here's how much time I spend. It's probably, like you said, ebbs and flows, but I said I probably spend 2 or 3 hours a week on
Yeah.
things, whether it be communication, emails, talk-ins, Zoom
Yeah.
meetings. And I said probably our
Yeah.
committee members, they're probably spending maybe 2 or 3 hours a month.
Yeah.
And they were
Now,
surprised by like
yeah.
how less it is. And what I was trying to do was saying like, look, this is not intimidating. It's not going to consume your
Mm.
time. But I think the
No, and
time
that's
that
the thing,
you
I think.
go ahead. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
I think that's the thing that people don't understand. It isn't all consuming. Now, for me, prior to our monthly meetings, I do spend time with Kim on the phone from the Cordon Group, uh, going over the agenda, things that have to be done in the meeting, that kind of stuff, um, just to make sure we're going to get everything covered in the allotted time. Because we've gone to a morning meeting once every other month and then an evening meeting that'll go longer than an hour. Our morning meeting's pretty much just an hour. So on those morning ones, I talk to her, so I make sure that we can get everything done. Um, but so there is a little bit more time involved getting ready for that, but it's still not an excessive amount of time
Yeah.
that's involved.
Yeah.
Um, but compared to when I was a committee member, yes, it's more, but I mean, it's not extensive.
Right. And that's what I was trying to tell the students, right? Like, and this is, because we obviously as an IATA want to encourage our members to be involved and be engaged. And
Mhm.
if you have opportunity to and or a passion to want to
Yep.
serve, whether it be a committee member, be a chair, or an elected officer,
Yep.
there's always opportunities. There's different things that we can always use help with.
Yeah.
And that's what I try to tell the students is like, don't let time be a barrier because time's usually not the issue. And nor is it expertise because we're all athletic trainers trying to figure this all out and do what we can to make the profession better in Indiana. So that's why I asked that question and kind of let people
Yeah.
listening know like, hey, this is if you're an IATA member, if you're not, please be an IAT member if you're an athletic trainer
Yep.
in Indiana. But if you are a member, there's always opportunities to get involved if you feel like this is the right time for you and your
Mhm.
point in life. Like
Yep.
there's always opportunities that we can get you plugged in with because the more hands we have on, the more things we can continue to get forward and move forward and move the needle forward as far
Yeah.
as the profession.
Well, and that's where I'm a big advocate of us having co-chairs for the committees. Uh, it's just that we are short on volunteers right now, that want to step up. Um, so anybody that's listening that is interested in serving, please reach out, either through the website and just email me, or email Daniel, and let us know, and we'll get you plugged in somewhere where you're interested. And if it's just as a role, the role of being on a committee, we'll gladly get you plugged in somewhere. But please, if you're at all interested, reach out.
Absolutely. And there's, like I said, there's always opportunities to serve. And one of the other things is, let's say somebody is maybe they don't, right now in their life, they don't have an opportunity to serve on a committee, right? We talk a lot about involvement and
Yep.
engagement with serving in the
Mhm.
IATA.
Yep.
What are some other ways people can still be engaged and involved with the IATA without necessarily, being a committee member or committee chair?
Um, I think they could probably come out and ask if they could help at a meeting in some format. So reach out to like professional development and say, hey, I can't necessarily serve on the committee, but I could help if you need help at this event, or if you need help at the honors and awards. Honors and awards is a good committee because they really only, I say this, it sounds bad when I say it that way, but they are only active during the awards cycle, and that's it. So that's kind of a good one to be involved in if you want to just get your feet wet. Um, there are a few other committees that aren't as active as others. So there's some places that you could get started in. Well, as an example, when I first started, um, I was a subcommittee, I guess is the right term, within communications back when we called it that. And my job was to send a card to the family of an IATA member who had passed away. That was my job. I didn't have to do it very often, but that was my involvement when I first started. And then I moved up to education, and when we still called it that. And I was on the committee that came up with the quiz bowl. So, I mean, it's just you get involved where you kind of want to be involved, and you get opportunities, and you just kind of find a way, and you go from there.
Absolutely. And one of the
So,
things being a part of the IATA board previously, and one of the things I'm always thrilled to hear about is when we talk about how our members are engaged, whether they may not be serving, right, in the IATA. I see a lot of engagement because we have good people coming to our annual symposium. We have people that are looking at
mhm,
emails, whether it be our monthly newsletters or it be legislative
yep,
updates. There's many
yep,
ways to be involved and engaged
yep,
and connect with the
mhm,
IATA without having to serve. But when you have the opportunity, obviously we would love to have you on board and be able to be a part of this. And then we also have, I think the other cool thing, and that many athletic trainers know in our state is that we have athletic trainers, whether it be in District 4, GLATA, and NATA, that are doing wonderful things and representing, the state of Indiana in a great fashion. And so, I'm always
yep,
excited to hear about what everybody's doing at different areas and different associations and societies across the athletic training, sports medicine community.
yeah. And well, and that's the nice thing. Well, or it is a nice thing. Indiana has such a rich history within the NATA and being a leader in athletic training. Um, and it goes way back to Pinky Newell, Bud Miller, uh, Bob Behnke, Mel Blickenstaff, John Schrader. I mean, there's a whole list I can keep going down. It is a very rich history of the NATA right here in this state. Um, and we have been generators of a lot of the things that have grown into NATA initiatives. So, like third party reimbursement. Um, so, that's some of the stuff that we can be very proud of. So, if people have ideas, well, the Quiz Bowl is another one. It
Yeah.
started here and it's now national. Um, we need to be continuing to get new people in with new ideas to keep generating that. No idea is not worth hearing. We need to hear it because you never know. It may be the next big thing that comes along. And that's where we need new people with new thoughts, new ideas. So please, if you're interested, let one of us know. Um, and if there's an idea, even for a new committee at this point, we'll entertain it. I think we generally cover everything, but there might be something that we're not covering that needs to be covered. So,
Sometimes we don't know about things until we're informed and or enlightened
yep,
by some of those ideas and thoughts that are out there. And obviously, we're a membership based association, and so it's us as a collective group of members that form the IATA, and so we need everybody that is part of this because our job, when I say we, obviously Becky, you're leading the association.
yeah,
And you have a great group of elected officers and committee chairs and coordinators that are working hard and doing
yep,
their role within the IATA. to make sure we represent our members well. We try to provide the things that we need to do and make a big impact in athletic training in our state. Things that we were talking about earlier, legislation. I mean, that's a huge part of what a lot of our membership dollars and things that when we have members sign up to be like, we're not just willy-nilly about this. It's really serious and it's important to all of us because we're all athletic trainers trying to do the right thing. And that's really make our profession better and make the lives of the people that we serve, the whether it be the IATA members and our patients that we get to serve even better.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, and we just need to keep generating new ideas. That's that's the big thing. And where a lot of those new ideas need to come from are our newer members and our younger members, but we need to get them engaged. And part of that is asking them to step out and let us know what they want to see.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to make the call to please let us know what you want to see the IATA become, because um, I don't want to dictate what that's going to be for you. I want you to dictate what the IATA is going to become for you. So you've got to speak up and let us know. Um, when I was a student, um, the IATA was being born, and I've watched it grow to where it is now. And, I want to see it continue to grow, but it's going to take the young people to do that. And, that's young people, even like yourself, Daniel. Um, so it's a matter of engagement with everybody, but we also need to nurture this younger group because it's going to be theirs down the road. So that's my big take on things. But I've got to have information from them to help move that part forward. So
That was kind of my next question. Obviously you talked about, seeing where the ITA has been and where it's at now. Maybe where do you see athletic training in Indiana in the next 30 to 40 years? If you could predict or what you would like to see, where we would at. I know
oh
that's a huge question and there's so many avenues you could go down, but I guess
wow.
if you could throw something off the top of your head there, where you would like maybe where the IATA, where athletic training is at in Indiana in the next 30 to 40 years.
I hope that we're in every school, high school, middle, all the way up through the college system, and also hope that we're in industrial sites. And I hope we're serving the entire Hoosier population, is what I hope is happening. I also hope that we are duly compensated for what we do and that we are making a living wage. Um, those are the things that I really hope.
Yeah. Yeah. I can definitely see in 30 40 years from now that, having athletic trainers in that secondary school space will become reality. But it obviously, I think what we talked about today is that there's it's a step by step process and nothing happened,
Oh, yeah.
what is it? The saying Rome wasn't built overnight type of thing.
No, it
Um,
was not built overnight, and this isn't going to happen overnight. It's going to take steps, and and it might be two steps forward, one step back. Um, Although I'd hope it's not. Um, it's a matter of 30, 40 years from now, it's going to look a lot different than it does now, and I hope it's the positive.
Absolutely. Shifting gears just a tad bit,
Yep.
one thing I did want to bring up and was excited for when you did become president was that you are the second female as an IATA president. Previous president was our ninth IATA president, who was Katie Grove.
Hmm.
So I wanted to talk maybe a little bit if you wanted to talk about being the second female president, and then obviously being in that elite group. Obviously, Katie Grove, tremendous athletic trainer, and we love to always claim her as our
Yep.
own. And so, talk a little bit about that and your thoughts
Yeah.
on that, if you had any.
Um, I reached out to Katie, and I also reached out to Marge Album, and I talked to both of them because I respect both of them. I've known them since I first started out in the profession. And Katie, I actually met when I made my college visit to Indiana State, and found out when I got there in the fall that she'd left to go get her doctorate. So I was disappointed then, but got to catch back up with her later in my career. But they gave me good advice on how to proceed forward, and it's interesting that I also have an all-female executive board,
Mm,
or or elected officers actually, um, and it's unique, and I don't know how to kind of put into words what I'm thinking. Actually, to be honest, I want to make sure I do a good job. That's the big thing, and to do that, I'm trying to lean on the people that are around me to make sure that it is done well. And sometimes that's hard. Yeah, having been a solo athletic trainer the majority of my career up until the last couple, like 2 years, um, it's extremely hard because I've had to do everything on my own. So this is hard to let go of some things and have other people do it. I'm getting better at it. I'm getting a lot better at it, but it's still hard. So,
absolutely.
um, but it's it's a process. I've had to learn a little quick and on the fly, but it's. I think I'm better at it than I was, 4 months ago, 6 months ago, and I'm definitely better than I was a year ago. So um, that's the process of the first year, but um, I think it definitely hasn't been a disadvantage being female. So
Well, and I think I would say probably all of IATA presidents would say, obviously nothing that they could ever do alone, and obviously
oh, definitely
needed
not.
needed great group around them to be able to keep the mission moving forward
Yeah.
and moving the ball. So
Mhm.
yeah, absolutely. Well, Becky, I did not have any other questions in
Okay.
regards, it's about your presidency. Was there anything that you wanted to add, or maybe something we didn't talk about that you did want to say on the episode today?
I do appreciate you restarting the podcast. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah. Well, it gives me an opportunity to yap a little bit, so it's probably good for
Uh,
me as much as it is hopefully people listening. Hopefully people get things out of it and those types of things. I did want to
well, and
ask
it
you.
keeps you involved in the IATA too.
Yep, I'm trying to still be involved and do things and just but it's great to always talk to some awesome athletic trainers across our great state. I did have a question for you. It's kind of a fun question I'm
Okay.
asking everybody this year on the podcast.
Okay.
If you
It's
could
yeah.
if you
If
could
I
be an
if
animal, what animal would you be and why?
um I think I would be a I've been thinking about this. I would be a dog because and I'd be a guardian type dog because I'd want to look out for people.
Yep.
So that's my take.
Yeah, that sounds like you. So, well,
Yeah.
again, Becky, I do appreciate you coming on to the IATA podcast and looking forward to seeing what your presidency over the next 12 months holds. And obviously,
Okay.
nothing but success and advancement for our profession
Okay.
I'm looking forward to it. So,
Okay. Thanks, Daniel.
all right, you have a great night.
You too.
Thank you for tuning in to the Indiana Athletic Trainers Association podcast. We appreciate you taking time to listen and look forward to you joining us again on the next episode. To find out more about the IATA or to get in touch with us, you can visit our website or reach out via social media.